Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's going to be reviewing the new album by Conway the Machine, which is often shortened to GDMM, which stands for Griselda Don't Make Mid. That's my little joke. Tell me in the comments how funny it is, or how funny it isn't. Of course, the album is actually called God Don't Make Mistakes, but I almost made a mistake. I almost didn't even listen to this album, much less review it. Now you might be thinking, but Sky, you review everything Griselda does. You said you would review everything they do until they release something whack, and they haven't done it. Griselda don't make mid. So why is it that I almost didn't review and listen to this album? Well, there's three reasons. The first one is super goofy. He came to my city. Conway came to my city like 2 weeks ago, Rochester, New York, and he played a concert. And I wanted to go, but I had COVID, and I couldn't in good conscience, share that with people. So I didn't see the concert. So I had this kind of like bitter, angry, sour grapes feeling like he's one of my favorite rappers of all time, much less currently active, and he was playing in my little podunk town. So that was frustrating. The second reason is maybe a little bit more controversial, which is that the more I think about it, the more I was disappointed by La Machina, his last album. Now, I just got in the mail, thanks to my Patreons who give me money to buy music, I just got in the mail from the Netherlands my copy of From King to a God, which is, I think, one of the best rap albums, definitely of this decade, and it's just one of my favorite rap albums. I just really love that album, front to back. I think it shows off his talent. I think it shows off the production talents of everybody in the whole Griselda crew, and I just think it's awesome. And so La Machina, when it came out last year, I liked it. But he was sort of talking about it being an evolution, and I just didn't feel that it was. The third reason is just, whenever I do these reviews, I have to have something to say. I have to have some kind of like framing device. And the thing that's getting increasingly frustrating with Griselda is sort of how do I have a framing device when they release so much? How do I say something different about each of their projects? They just release so much. So, Fortunately, once I started listening to the album and paying attention to it, it became very clear that I had to review it, and I have lots to say about it. One thing I think is interesting is, in sports, there's this question. Like, do players play better when they are up for contract renewal or up for a new contract? And in general, yes, they do. If you sign a player to a $20 million a year contract, he is less likely to play well in the second year of that contract than in the final year of that contract where he's trying to get another $20 million contract. So, I think with Conway, I guess Kanye is also off his label. With Conway being off of Griselda and being off of Shady, it does feel like he's just really hungry and he's really showing off that he's ready for prime time. But the most important thing is that this album, I have something to say about it because he's really evolved. This album really shows a real evolution. It's kind of in two parts. The one part is just street, street, street. I cook crack, street, street, streets. I shoot people. Okay, all that stuff, which is the Griselda stuff that we love. And how better to deliver that than some guy in a yellow sweatshirt? Like that's the one thing that we love about Griselda is the great elegant crack raps. But then on the other side, he's sort of taking a page maybe from Benny's book, from Benny the Butcher's book, or maybe just from the general zeitgeist of hip-hop right now, which is moving towards a much more vulnerable place. I believe this vulnerable place is essential for the growth of hip-hop. I believe it is essential for civil rights and for equality. I think the more that African American men understand that there is that not that they understand, but are permitted to display vulnerability by culture in general. The more they understand their ability to display vulnerability, the stronger the people will be. True strength, not shown strength. So this album, I don't mind the crack, 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 I like crack stuff. But the stuff that really moves me is this emotional side. Now, it's not emo rap, okay? Like, emo rap is fine, but that's, very sort of solipsistic, very much like, I can't believe it, I'm so alone in my house, and I keep drinking all this cough syrup. Yeah, it's not like that. It's not emo. It's Chanel. It's emotional hip-hop music. He talks a lot about specific tragedies, and he addresses them specifically here. And he talks about his need for flowers. There's this expression that's been happening in hip-hop for the last couple of years, I didn't hear it before then, where rappers talk about wanting to get their flowers, which means get their appreciation. And the theory is, if you don't give rappers their flowers now, they will get them after they die. And so this album is partly Conway searching for his flowers. Now, maybe that's because he wants a good contract, but also just like, he's like desperately searching for validation, understanding, appreciation, empathy. This album is like a huge scream for empathy. And I, for one, am always happy to see that. Because this is the trick, right? The strongest people in the world are the people who are most in touch with their weaknesses, with their vulnerability. And that's what we're seeing in this album. Like, true strength. Which is why I will tell you at the end of this video, if Conway has eked his way into Professor Sky's top 5 active and alive MCs. Sorry, Rakim and Notorious B.I.G. I have to make some space here. So, and also please excuse if you hear the sound of my dog snoring. If you hear the sound, please tell me in the comments. It's kind of a funny thing that I do here. Just my dogs are all over the place. You can't stop them. So let me show you what's up. What's up with Conway's new album, God Don't Make Mistakes, with the stamp, the example song from the album, Stressed, produced by frequent Griselda producers, Derringer and Beat Butcher. Now this has a very, a literal boom bap beat. It's like boom, boom, bap. It's actually like the bass drum's going boom and the snare's going bap. Kind of twinkling sounds, nice twirls in the chorus. It's a fairly straightforward beat. In general, this album is not spectacular for its beats. Like, there's very few beats where I'm just like saying, oh, this is the best. The beats aren't quite up to From King to a God standard. But it's really his lyrics on this evolution of his lyric. The first verse is basically explaining how he's not rich enough to give all the money to the people who are asking for money. And then we get the chorus, do anybody care that I'm stressed? Over and over again. He's begging for empathy. And for what it counts. I care. Okay, Conway? And Conway doesn't, no one watches, it's very rare that an artist will watch my video. Maybe he will. Maybe you know him. Maybe you want to just send him a message on Instagram or Twitter. Just tell him that we care he's stressed. Because it does matter. Conway's given us all this great music and art, and he's asking for us to care. It's beautiful. Like, why can't we just tell him we do care? Now, I understand that we're not the people who are causing a lot of this stress in his life, but still, I think it's important. You tell me in the comments. Just say, I care, Conway. Let's say, because he wants his flowers and he wants care. And then the second verse is just heart-wrenching. He talks about his cousin's suicide in a beautiful and visceral way. My cousin, he took a cord and put his throat through that. Wish I had a chance to tell her, don't do that. Don't understand. Depression is real. People stressing about real life, you stressing your bills. So depression is real. And this is a thing that we're seeing all over hip-hop. Really addressing the correlation between trauma and depression. Now, maybe it's partly because of this world that we're living in, where psychologically we're understanding better the correlation between trauma and depression. But trauma as experienced by African Americans is much different than the trauma experienced by white Americans. The amount of trauma, the kind of trauma, the systematic nature of the trauma. And we're seeing it's being reflected to us. It's what hip-hop is doing. We can't pretend like we don't know. I gotta wake Bo up. Bo, please, Bo, would you stop? Bo, I'm trying to make a really meaningful point. Bo, please stop. I can't stop him. It's okay. I'm just, do you even hear that? I get all up in my head. It's really important that we address this and that we allow hip-hop to reflect this truth back to us. That we stop just using hip-hop as a way to say, oh, cool, gangsters selling crack, and it's just like the Wild West. And we actually get to the truth, which is this exploitative system, this insane wealth gap, which has been imposed by all governments and presidents since the 1980s, ensuring that the poor stay poor and the rich stay rich. Depression is real. And then he goes even further than that. Not too long after my cousin hung himself, I never told anybody, but I lost a son myself. Imagine being in the hospital holding your dead baby, and he looks just like you trying to keep from going crazy. That's why I drink a bottle daily, to keep all the ish I kept up bottled in lately. So what a fascinating, not fascinating, just terrible. It's a terrible thing, the idea that he lost a son. I didn't know this, we don't know that, and he's associating it with this, and then he's using it as a way to describe his alcoholism. He's actually made, in this song, a couple direct references, and I'm going to quote one more in a second, direct references to alcoholism and the source of alcoholism. What happens when people don't get the empathy they need from people around themselves, and they internalize all of their thoughts, as men are taught to do, and as African American men are probably more encouraged to do by culture, to push their feelings down, to just like this triangle right here, just push it down into your stomach, down into your heart. Don't let it out, push it down. And what happens is, I drink the bottle daily for all the ish I keep bottled in lately. It's an amazing call for empathy. It's great. The chorus is fine. Does anyone care that I'm stressed? The beat's fine. The beat's good, obviously. GDMM. But, wow. And in the third verse, he starts right off talking about being abused as a kid. 10-month-old, I was abused, kicked in the stomach, I swelled up like a balloon. So he's going back to childhood trauma, to personal trauma, less sort of systematic trauma and more personal trauma. Alcoholism is a sickness. How many people are going to admit they addicted? Yeah, I drink because I'm stressed because I'm depressed because I'm just tired of this ish. They you stressed, boy, you blessed. The correlation between happiness and wealth does not exist. It doesn't. It just doesn't. There's enough evidence to prove that money doesn't buy you happiness. Now, of course, the lack of money can lead to sadness in a way that a presence of money, while being rich doesn't make you happy, being poor can make you sad, obviously, because you don't have access and you have that sense of desperation. But still, this childhood trauma, this active trauma, and his inability to cope with it is center stage in this song. They don't know about the nights where I can't even get rest, suicide and pressure, lost a son, drink a bottle a day for all the stuff bottled up, crying in the mirror every time I look at my face. So this is another aspect of this album where, if you don't know, Conway was shot in the face and has Bell's palsy and half his face sort of droops. And he talks about it a lot, especially on this album, but here's this concept of he looks in the mirror and he cries because he doesn't like the way that he looks. It's very powerful, very emotive stuff. And this is why I had to review it. This is why. This is the evolution. Lock Load is the first song. I'm going to go through the rest of the album much quicker. Have a sip of my coffee from my official Professor Sky branded mug. You can buy that if you want, or don't. It's a cool mug though, I think. Matches my goofy sweatshirt. So Lock Load, another beat Butcher and Derringer beat, probably the best beat on the album, that cool kind of 70s TV sound. And it's, the issue I have is that it's not really, it's that other side. It's that street side of the album, which I find less interesting. I do love hearing Beanie Siegel on here. So I don't know what happened. And you can tell me in the comments if I don't know what happened to Beanie Siegel. If you were super into Rockefeller in the late 90s, like I was, in the early 2000s, he was like Jay-Z and Beanie Siegel. They were just always together. They were always they were almost like a group. The idea that I haven't even thought of the name Beanie Siegel except for I just haven't thought of Beanie Siegel. I just haven't. And I even have Beanie Siegel's CD in my collection, but I just haven't thought about it. But he has an interesting kind of whispering, raspy delivery here, which is quite interesting. Maybe that points to why I haven't heard from him. Maybe his voice hurts or something. Okay, Bo's leaving, so you're not going to have to hear the snoring or the licking anymore. Next up is the song Tear Gas, produced by Cosmo. I pray that you don't just jump to this because of the features. There's this thing that happens in hip-hop where, like, usually one or two songs have, like, the big features, and then people jump to those to hear the features. Still, it's a cool kind of soul line in the back. I like something that's been happening in production. It feels like it's been inspired by some stuff that Kanye's been doing, or has been producing, like in Off the Grid, the presence of the drum fill and the Off the Grid bit. I'm not quite sure, but just like little drum fills being integrated into the beat. But this has a wonderful verse from Conway. Probably won't get my flowers while I can smell them. Gonna take my untimely demise before they realize I was a legend. I can see the ish now, everybody posting their pictures with a caption make people think you really was my Told my mama don't let them F-ns in my funeral, bury me in my jewels, so know my life was beautiful. This idea that he will get his flowers and people will pretend they're with him. And then we have one of the most bizarre lines. Okay, Russell Wilson is mentioned twice in this album. So Russell Wilson, the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, maybe the Washington Commandos. I don't know. They changed their name to something. Commanders maybe. Russell Wilson, a.k.a. Mr. Unlimited, who's famous for being sort of a milquetoast, non-flashy, kind of boring guy, despite the fact he would like you to know him as Mr. Unlimited. He's just sort of thought of as kind of a boring guy. So he talks about the pain of having a Russell Wilson type raising your kid. So here it's sort of like the image of like a nerdy stepfather. The chorus here is about being alone when you needed help, one of the big themes here. Lil Wayne is good. He's not, so Lil Wayne, like most rappers, have like a 0 to 10 scale. Lil Wayne never dips below a 6, and he's rarely below a 7. So this is probably like an 8 verse from him, which is a 10 for most other people. It's a thin line. Wheezy and Khan catch us on the incline. Up in thin air, so high sometimes my throne feel like a wheelchair. I'm half dead as it is, flag red as it is. Just the idea of a throne feeling like a wheelchair. Just these kinds of images that that Lil Wayne can throw out there. That it feels like he just wakes up, does 5 features, and then goes back to sleep. Rick Ross is also solid. Not really worth quoting. That's sort of how I feel about Rick Ross. Like, I'm always happy to see him, but I'm never like, oh, remember that Rick Ross line? He talked about being a boss, and then I think he said Maybach music. But he's always good, and especially the timbre of his voice. Piano Love is the next track, produced by Alchemist. Great Alchemist beat. It's kind of like a long sample. It's kind of like the piano's sort of tinkling up and down, and the nature of this verse, of this song, what I like is he's constantly talking about like where he is now at the top of the game, multimillionaire, all that, while talking about where he was down in the trenches and cooking up crack and all that stuff. So he's constantly going back and forth between his different stages of being from the past to the present, while the pianos are kind of doing that as well. I like how he talks about sitting at the press box at all the games, sitting next to the Pagulas. The Pagulas are the family that own the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. So it's a very specific sports reference. But then he'll just go right on and talk about eating ramen noodles. He also says a couple times, spooky, which appears to be one of his new ad-libs, which I think is quite cool. Drum Work is the next song. Just awesome. This might actually be up to the quality of From King to a God. I think it'll take a little bit of time. If I can find a way to buy this new album, I'll buy it. But it's so hard buying underground hip-hop. You have to be like really ready to buy it. It's produced by Derringer, and it's got one of my favorite kinds of beats, which I call the Incarcerated Scarface style beat, which is kind of like a low-key, lo-fi sounding drums with a very hard hi-hat hit of the hi-hat open, closing. So along with that, 2 different piano notes. So it's a great, perfect RZA style beat. And here's a weird thing. There's this line, okay, in this song. I'm Russell Wilson, how I wiggle through duress. Picture me stressed. So stop contradicting yourself, Conway. You're saying that you're like Russell Wilson in a good way. 2 songs ago, Russell Wilson was raising your kid and you were pissed. And here he's like, imagine me being stressed. Me? Being stressed? Conway the Machine? When he's spending half of the album talking about how stressed he is. But that's the issue, right? That's this duality, where the street side of him has to be never stressed, always cool, always under control, always do. And then this other part of him, this more authentic part of him, is saying, please see me, please recognize me, please care for me. Hey, speaking of flowers, are you a feminist? I'm a feminist. I don't talk about it all the time on this channel, but I consider myself a feminist. I've taught classes in the Women and Gender Studies department before. Hip-hop has a representation of women problem. It really does. Have you noticed that the Griselda crew doesn't have that problem? Have you noticed that they have 4 female rappers who are great and who are constantly on the albums and are constantly featured and make their own solo albums? 4? Chez Noir, Armani Caesar, Keisha Plum, and then on this song, Love the Genius. Why is that? Do you know why? Because we need to give Griselda flowers. They just do it naturally. They don't make a big deal about it. I don't see them in interviews saying we're representing for women. It's not like Buffalo, a very small city, has more talented female rappers than, I don't know, New York or Texas or Chicago. But somehow, when I pay attention to hip-hop music and I think, where are all the best female MCs? They're all coming out of Buffalo because they are given space. They are given the same treatment as other guest rappers. So Stove God Cooks comes on a song and he's a dude. Great. Armani Caesar comes on and she's a lady. Great. There's some, we just need to appreciate what Griselda's doing. I don't know if West Side Gun deserves all the credit for this. I don't know if obviously the rappers themselves, they deserve the credit for being great. But the fact they're given a space to shine is a special thing that's happening, and it's happening at Griselda. And it didn't happen with No Limit. It didn't happen with Rockefeller. It didn't happen with Death Row. And go ahead and give me your one rapper here and one rapper there. And this person had sort of an interesting thing here. Please, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. It's not when you think of Griselda and you think of the Griselda crew, at least a quarter of it is female. And that's a step up. I now know how to say Love the Genius. 7XVE the Genius. I don't speak elite speak. I just thought it was 7X the Genius. I'm 44 years old. Leave me alone. But she's great. Great verse on here. I've been scared, hurt, and depressed. Wasn't conquered, though. Now, I'm doing my best. Send him to hospitals. Got bigger things to worry about than how you say my name. One of the greatest of the day. Verified by my chain. So I like how she references the inability to say her name. Jay Skis is is a male rapper who's on here. It's quite good. I rose from this ish, getting crazy. Where you see we're legends in the flesh. We're legends in the flesh. Now's the time to give us daisies, not later. This constant theme of give us our flowers. Wild Chapters is produced by Hit Boy. I love Hit Boy. He's obviously one of the greatest producers of all time. But he's not, Derringer and Beat Butcher and even Cosmo, I think, outproduce him on this album. But he only got one song, so who knows? This has a woman singing, novel, not a woman, a person, a man singing, novel. And he has this cool kind of strained way of singing, which I don't like a lot in the chorus, but he gets a verse, which is quite good. This also has a verse with Conway where he talks about his dead son. And T.I. has a very strong verse. T.I. is one of these rap artists who I just totally missed. I wasn't paying attention to music during his heyday. So every time I hear him, I go, hey, that's cool, but I don't know anything about him. Guilty, his next song, cool kind of soul sample. The word guilty after this very nice sort of plodding piano. A very tight beat after that. This is by Beat Brothers. This sound of a woodblock is really cool. This is the first time on the album where he goes into deep detail about his shooting. Clapped in my head and neck, that ish was inches from hitting my carotid. the artery in your neck. That I would have bled to death and nobody could stop it. Doctor said the bullet too close to my voice box to try and get it out. You can't touch it and I doubt there's anything we can do about it. Bell's palsy from damage to my nerves. No feeling in my legs. I took a bullet in the head. I took a wig shot. That's why I chuckle in the comments I read about the way my face looked, and I could have been dead. Just focus on the lyrics. Don't focus on my appearance. He's pleading for recognition. And that's what we're doing. We're focusing on his lyrics. Next song, John Woo Flick, produced by Kill and Derringer. And this is with Benny the Butcher and with West Side Gun. And it's just another reminder of just how great the Griselda crew is. To have only 3 rappers and have such variance between them, different styles, different approaches, while similar thematics, while all being so close, it's really special. Like, it's really special. Like, when we talk about what did the Wu-Tang do, the thing they were able to do is have such distinct voices and distinct styles while all fitting in well together. Really, Griselda is like a mini Wu-Tang in that way. Conway starts rapping, he's kind of relaxed, and then they bring in some drums. Lots of ad-libs, do, which has been missing on the rest of the album. Always nice to hear. A super crazy chorus. Sprayed 80, baby woke up. It's like he has a baby who's waking up with gunshots. Hey. There's a bug. I don't know if you saw it. I don't edit. You see I don't edit my videos. You see me yelling at my dog, looking at bugs who aren't here. Maybe don't shoot guns around your baby. An interesting sort of bridge here where Derringer compared to RZA. I'm compared to that'll stab you in your face with a pair of scissors. Just kind of a funny line here. And then Benny the Butcher comes through. He's just great. An awesome verse from him. That's Wayne Perry-ish, Yalton's, Wayne Brady's. So Wayne Brady's often seen as a sort of, again, another milquetoast African-American figure, which, damn. I don't think I'm in a position to do it. But I think if there's any African-American social commentators who want to approach the way that Wayne Brady is depicted in African-American culture and what that means. I mean, Dave Chappelle had the whole sketch with him, which was very funny and played on that theme. But if we took like Wayne Brady and Russell Wilson as these 2 figures of sort of overly effeminate, overly nerdy African-American manhood, I think there's something there. I think because Wayne Perry, who's comparing him to, is a famous Washington, D.C. gangster, which is interesting because they also mentioned going to a Washington Wizards basketball game earlier, like kind of setting us up in the DC thing here. Just a very straight West Side Gun verse here. I really like the way the sound effects swirl behind his voice, and just as always, the interaction between them is great. Next song is Stressed, which we already discussed. Although I didn't discuss the outro by Wallow267, kind of a nice sort of almost a spoken word outro. So Much More is the next track, produced by Justice League. Strange name. I don't know how this isn't a closing track. It sounds like a closing track, almost like anime sounds and children chorus behind. He talks about how he's a legend, didn't have to sell a soul to sell records. I wrote some of the illest verses and shifted the culture, but I'll probably never... Let's hope I got it. But I'll probably never get the credit. But part of me hope I never do, because if I'm already the best ever, then what's left to do? So an interesting line, interesting concept here about, again, not getting his credit, but saying maybe it's better he doesn't get his credit. He also talks about how he's given back to his community during COVID, but that's not featured in the news. What is featured is when he got arrested. And then he talks about modern-day slaves. Them crackers own the masters. Right? Talking about the 360 deals that exist and about the fact that mostly people who look like me or my parents or my uncles, they're the people who benefit most financially from the creations of people who look like him. Right? So the privilege that comes with my upbringing versus the lack of privilege comes up with his. We have this exploitative situation, and what's cool is at the same time that we're having rappers being more vulnerable across the board, from gangster rap to pop rap to indie rap to mainstream rap, everything's getting more emotional. We're also having a real consciousness of, hey, how about rap artists control the masters of their own music? How about they control their own money flow? How about they don't get 1 point off of a .0003 cent play? Nice kind of piano outro. Next song is Chanel Pearls, again produced by Cosmo with Jill Scott. Kind of a cool, like almost like a 90s throwback to the time when R&B and hip hop could go together and it didn't suck. Because Jill Scott, she delivers a verse that's quite good and funny, you know. And then she's able to sing later. It's a nice throwback in that way. Again, I recently drove through New York and listened to Hot 97, and just how weak all the music was. Just there was like no hip hop, and like even the stuff that was kind of hip hop was kind of weak. Like there used to be a time where a crossover between R&B and hip hop would be like All I Need, you know, like by Method Man, which is like no hip hop head is going to hear that song and be like, it's whack because there's a lady singing. Like we love it. Right? And then people who like R&B here, and they're not going to be like, it's not good because there's a Method Man on it. So this song is taking back to that. Maybe we could do more of that. I don't know. Next song, Babas by Beat Butcher and Derringer. Like a drum solo beat, these blaring synths. And Keisha Plum is always good doing her spoken word poetry thing, talking about beautiful scars, which I think is very important with Conway. And then Conway does something which I don't even understand. I'm 30 minutes into this goddamn interview. And I'm still surprised. I don't know what he did. This production on here. Is this Derringer? Is this Beat Butcher? Is this Conway? Who's doing this? I've never heard a verse like this. It's doubled, maybe tripled. One voice is going just straight forward, then the other is like totally blown out and altered, but it's laid right over top. So the whole thing has this weird blown out sound, and Conway, the lyrical master he is, uses a slightly different flow. I have never heard anything like this before. Please, hip hop heads who are watching this and don't care about my dog or the gnats buzzing around my head, tell me, like, who else has made something that sounds like this? The album ends with God Don't Make Mistakes, again by The Alchemist. Just a very simple, gorgeous beat. Alchemist, his two things on here are just very simple and well crafted. This is kind of an old school song. Like old school hip hop would often have like concept songs, you know? I mean, the Run DMC had a ton of them. What if we made a song called You Talk Too Much, and it's about talking too much? What if we had a song about things being tricky? And a lot of old school rappers would do that, right? Because they're trying to figure out what to say. So this is basically a Marvel what if that he's doing, where Conway's talking about all these things that could have happened. And he gets very specific in the beginning. What if I was in that car with LeVar when Doughboy got clapped? It's like, I don't know who LeVar is. I don't know who Doughboy. But then he tells the exact story of his shooting. He gives details like a writer. Like it was a foggy night. It's a dark and foggy night. And he almost went to go record a song with French Montana, which, based on what I heard by French Montana, I don't know. You dodged a bullet there. Maybe French Montana's good. I've never heard anything that he did was good. That's kind of callous of me. I'm not going to edit this out. But I'm not proud of that joke. You know, I don't have a script. I have notes. So feel free to downvote me and call me a coffee bunk. But he tells this whole story about getting shot into great detail, even further. Everything happens for a reason, but what if I never got shot in the head? And then what's interesting is he talks about the benefits of getting shot in the face, how it probably helped his career. Sometimes I wonder if this Bell's palsy didn't paralyze my grill, would there still be murals of my face painted on the side of buildings? Was that why he made it? It's an interesting question because it is true. It does make them stand out. It's not just another crew. It's like a crew with someone who actually got shot in the face, and that has an impact. I mean, no. Obviously not, because they're so good and they're so talented they would have made it. But just sort of going on and on, will these streets take me under? And then it ends with his mother making an appearance. Again, this plea for humanity. It's hard not to take someone's humanity seriously when their mother is pleading for their life. So, does Conway make it into Professor Sky's top 5 active and alive? Yes, he does. I did this very quickly, so this might be subject to change. Here's my top 5. Number 5, Jay Electronica. Number 4, Nas. Number 3, Playboi Carti. Number 2, Conway the Machine. Number 1, Mock Hami. Hey Jay, hey Kendrick, your place is waiting on the list. But you gotta do that thing where you go into the studio okay? And you hit record, and then you start doing the thing that you do better than anybody else on planet Earth, okay? That's how we'll get NAS off the list, because everyone knows for some reason NASA fans hate me. But hey, what am I going to do? I got ears. I've been hearing what he's doing. You feel free to leave your top 5 active and alive in the list as well. I almost put J. Cole on there. I almost put a lot of people on there, but that was the list I made quickly before making this. All right. Until next time, there's the camera.